Recording in progress.
Good evening. I am going to call the Palo Alto Policy and Services Committee meeting of June 11th, 2024 to order. Madam Clerk, will you call roll, please?
Councilmember Koo,
Yes.
Councilmember Lithcott-Hames,
Here.
Councilmember Tanaka. 2 present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we will go ahead and take public comments on items not on the agenda.
We have no requests to speak.
Very good. Thank you. I think I have the old agenda. Yes. Okay, now we'll move to action items. First one is presentation from Downtown Streets team regarding the Downtown Streets team program. Ms. Cotton Gaines.
Thank you, Chair Koo and members of the Policy and Services Committee. We have 2 representatives this evening from the Downtown Streets team that will be talking a little bit about their program. They'll walk you through information on it. This item is not intended to be an action item for the committee, just an opportunity for Downtown Streets team to share information about their program. For context, there is a report in your council agenda for next week. That's a consent item. That is the updated version of the contract with Downtown Streets team. So that's not the item being discussed today, but just if you have some of those broader contractual questions, that is in your packet for next week. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Downtown Streets team.
Hi there. Chris Richardson, Chief Program Officer. Check. There we go. Chris Richardson, Chief Program Officer for Downtown Streets team. Thanks so much for having us. Councilmember Koo, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Councilmember Lithcott-Hames, nice to make your acquaintance.
And you can lift up your mic a little bit so you don't have to. Yeah, there you go.
I'm used to having bad posture. So wanted to start off with a beautiful picture. If you haven't had a chance to see it, it was displayed over here at All Saints and then over at Cal Ave, or actually previously over at Cal Ave, some of our former team members, now graduates, and a couple of our existing team members. I wanted to start with that. Again, Chris Richardson, been with Downtown Streets team for quite a while, but I'm very excited today to introduce one of our newest staff members and our new CEO, Julie Gardner.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Julie Gardner. I'm the new CEO for Downtown Streets team. I'm super excited to be here. This is actually my first time in this space. So yeah, excited to see Chris give a demonstration of our program and take any questions you all might have. Thanks for having us.
We asked to speak to this committee to let you know a little bit about what we do as a refresher. And I think some of this will be new information. I apologize if not. Next slide, please, or 2 slides. If you're unaware, Downtown Streets team was founded here in Palo Alto in 2005, back when the Downtown Business Association was first formed. They had conducted a survey of business owners who identified homelessness and cleanliness as their 2 biggest issues. And so very simply, the idea was to engage folks living on our streets to clean up as a way, psychosocial rehabilitation, as a way of performing that work and getting folks permanently out of homelessness. When we asked folks after founding Downtown Streets team, well, we asked them several questions. One of them was, what is the worst part about experiencing homelessness? It was a multiple choice question. Overwhelmingly, folks filled in some form of feeling marginalized, feeling isolated, feeling looked down upon, not having friends or family to count on. The way people look down on me, we saw multiple times. And so next slide, and we could probably move on. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. That really formulated our philosophy, our service philosophy. And if you go to the next slide, one of our most common sayings at Downtown Streets team, that homelessness is an experience, not an identity. And that's incredibly important. We feel not only in someone's rehabilitation from the experience of homelessness and how they feel about themselves. One of our theories of change is that when someone feels better about themselves, they feel more motivated and hopeful, and they're more likely, obviously, to be successful. But it's a really damaging construct to examine this population as folks that need our help and cannot participate in the solution to homelessness itself. And so next slide. That helped formulate our mission at Downtown Streets Team, which is ending homelessness through the dignity of work and the power of community. And the reason we included that power of community a few years ago, next slide, is because it's an incredibly important aspect of our program is folks helping each other out of the homelessness experience. And so what that has looked like, our core model or STVP model, as we call it, a street team volunteer program is folks get one of our yellow shirts. They can go up the chain, green and blue shirt. I'm going to talk about another shirt color that we've introduced recently soon. In exchange for their beautification in our community, they get case management, they get employment services, they get a basic needs stipend, and it's an incredibly low barrier way to start off in this psychosocial rehabilitation program. We don't need folks to have their IDs, have access to basic needs. We address those for them. So next slide. I mentioned community is our secret sauce. And our other secret sauce is engaging those folks and making them part of the solution. We've always had a secondary motive in the work that we do in creating a different narrative in our community. The whole or the old adage, get a job bum, again, is not very helpful and extremely damaging. You can't say that to one of our team members cleaning up our streets at Palo Alto. They're working really hard to improve their own circumstances and help each other out. So what that looks like in its purest form, next slide, is our team meeting. Now, Councilmember Koo, I know you've been to a team meeting, but I would like to invite the rest of you and staff to one of our team meetings. They're the highlight of our program. They happen 2 blocks away at All Saints, and they have every Thursday for almost 20 years now. There are team members uplifting each other, encouraging each other. Their resilience is on display. It's where we share resources. It's where we welcome folks onto the team. It's a lot of fun, and it's where you can see people helping others out of homelessness. Next slide. Back in July, we actually introduced our Streets Team Enterprise program here in Palo Alto. This is a next step beyond the volunteer program. Once someone is document ready, has addressed a lot of their basic needs, we are now the employer of record for them. We provide termed employment that still has case management, still has employment services. We actually launched this program in San Francisco about 4 years ago, near the beginning of the pandemic, right before, because we wanted to do even better. We saw a lot of people that were still holding on to Downtown Streets Team and weren't quite ready to make the leap without some other step there. And so now we are that step. When we launched this year, we're about to cap off at the end of this month, our most successful year in the history of our organization, which is pretty exciting, especially when it comes to our human service outcomes. So what does that mean? We're about placing people in employment about twice as much as we did last year, which is pretty exciting. We're placing even more people into housing, and we're moving barriers to self-sufficiency at our highest rate ever. So we just last week actually eclipsed 10,000 barriers to self-sufficiency throughout the entire agency. Which is a milestone we've never hit before. Next slide, please. And even though Palo Alto is our home, it's also my hometown. We've now grown to 20 cities throughout Northern and Central California. I believe a large part of that, next slide, please, is back in 2018, then Governor Brown asked the 11 mayors of the 11 biggest cities at a convening what their biggest issue were, and all 11 said homelessness. And so the Homelessness Task Force was created with the League of California Cities and the California State Association of Counties. They looked throughout the state at interventions to homelessness and identified Downtown Streets Team as one of only 5 evidence-based best practices. So that's a little background on us, and I'm going to kick it back over to Julie to talk about our future.
Thanks, Chris. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to close this out with a little bit of an overview of what our vision is. But before I do that, I do want to take some space to address some of the concerns that the council has expressed some interest in understanding the conclusion to with our organization. So the first one was the 2019 employee claims against the organization. I can report back that that has concluded. In 2020, there was an independent investigation that that was conducted, and that report was provided to the Chief People Officer here in Palo Alto. After reviewing that report, they were satisfied with the results and were happy to continue our partnership with the city. The second was a regulatory disagreement in San Francisco in 2022. That one has also been resolved. That one was in regards to our volunteer model and our basic needs stipends. And so while that one has been resolved, we took proactive and voluntary actions to look at our model within our organization and have implemented changes organizational wide. So happy to answer any questions at the end about either one of those or anything else, but I'll just close us out with our vision. So the way that I look at it is Downtown Streets team is in a really beautiful place. We are riding on a legacy of almost 20 years of service in Palo Alto. The human impact, the community impact that has been achieved is profound. And now we are moving into our next evolution where we have refreshed leadership. So we have new leadership at the senior leadership level within the organization, as well as new board members. And our folks are really committed to figuring out what is the evolution of Downtown Streets teams to make sure we are continuing to meet the needs of our community. And so first and foremost, we want to continue to fulfill our mission, which is to address homelessness through the dignity of work and the power of community. But we're really interested in doubling down on that pipeline to that job pipeline for our folks, our community members who are experiencing homelessness. And so Chris was able to kind of mention a little bit about that with our Street Teams Enterprises division. But really what we're hoping to do is provide employment for folks in tandem with those services that then lead to actual permanent, stable, transformative employment. A beautiful example of that is actually Start Santa Clara County, which is a program we just launched this week. That one is happening right here in Santa Clara County, and it is in partnership with Red F and Job Train, where our participant employees, which are our folks who are experiencing homelessness or reentering after incarceration, are hired by Downtown Streets team. They are provided an 11-week paid training program to learn how to do property maintenance. And after that training is complete, then we deploy them into our partner permanent supportive housing or other housing facilities to actually do property maintenance. And so what that looks like is when somebody moves out of a unit or repairs need to happen, our folks go in with those new skills, they practice them, and eventually our goal is to migrate them into permanent transformative employment. If you really think about it, somebody who's able to achieve that skill building, that has the potential to change someone's economic trajectory over a life course. So we're really invested in that part of our model, in addition to the volunteer pipeline that Chris talked about. And the last piece is really investing in our commitment to meeting people where they are. So really that's our outreach services and our place-based case management, because we understand it is very important to be accessible to the folks that we are serving and to remove as many barriers to accessing our services as possible. So with that, we really are compounding 20 years of learning with this reinvigorated commitment to our service here. So we're really excited to learn from you all, from our city partners, what your vision is for Palo Alto and how we fit into that. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, congratulations and welcome, Ms. Gardner.
Thank you.
Yeah, and congratulations to the team, for all the work that you do. Would you like to speak, Ms. Councilmember Liz Hames?
Sure, thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Richardson and Ms. Gardner. We really appreciate the presentation tonight and welcome to town. I think we met, did we meet at that event that Council Supervisor Ellenberg held,
We
right?
sure did,
Yeah,
yep.
nice to see you again. I have a bunch of questions, just wanting to better understand how it all works, because it does sound really magical. And so I guess my first question is, how does somebody become part of DST? Are there referrals from partner organizations or word of mouth kind of on the street, so to speak?
Yeah, great question. Chris, I'm going to tap you in for programs questions.
Yeah. Here in Palo Alto, there really is only one other provider in town. And so it is predominantly word of mouth. We do some of our own outreach as well, and it's a lot of peer-to-peer outreach as well. The network here has always been really strong, and we've always found that if we're doing good work and we're helping folks, that word gets around and people show up.
When you say there's only one other provider, are we talking about support services for unhoused people?
Yes,
Or for
yeah.
street cleaning?
Direct services for
through-
unhoused individuals at the
Opportunity Center?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And what are the terms, you've gone through a little bit of kind of what folks get. I'm interested in the terms and conditions of being a part of DST, sort of what's required at the, on your end in terms of selection and training and management and so on. And then I'm interested in what the individual gets. I understand the non-cash stipend, but what is that? And you talked about mentioning the different levels of shirts from yellow on to green and blue. And so I'd love to have a sense of those two pieces, what you're providing and expecting,
Mhm.
and then what folks are getting in addition to the dignity of work and the community.
I'll take a stab at this one. Okay, so the way that I look at it internally is we have two divisions of programming within Downtown Streets Team. We have our Streets Teams volunteer program, which Chris really talked about, and that's our yellow shirts, kind of the traditional model that we've seen. And now we have our newer division, which is our Street Teams Enterprises division, where we are actually employing folks who are unhoused, providing that first, second, third chance employment, that safe space for them to develop those skills and then graduate them into longer term employment. And so within those two divisions, ideally what we're looking for is kind of that pipeline, right? So somebody who is interested and somebody can engage with services kind of in and out. It's not like just a direct pipe, but like people can come to a success meeting, like Chris said, and feel it out, see, do I want to join the team? Do I want to engage in services? Folks can come to the success meetings or our workshops and not be part of the volunteer program. And folks can do that in tandem. And so ideally what would happen is somebody would volunteer, be able to build those skills with us, social skills, social capital, ability to the soft skills of showing up on time, communication, community, all of those aspects, while we are continuously encouraging them to consider the employment or lead opportunities with us. And so in our STE employment opportunities, we actually have a handful of those that we offer. One of them is a lead volunteer opportunity. So that is when folks are actually graduate into those positions where they're leading a team of volunteers, but they are a paid lead in that position. And then we also have opportunities where folks are engaging in environmental cleanups in the way of, it's a partnership with BCOE and Caltrans, but if you see folks typically around the Bay Area on the sides of the highways that are removing debris and keeping our highways safe, that is very likely one of our STE crews. And then we also have Start Santa Clara County that just launched. So the pipelines to employment do differ depending on folks' interests, skill sets, and those types of things. And then if you are a participant of the STE division, of course, you are a paid employee with us and you are being provided that safe employment experience. Also, you're being provided case management and employment specialist services, because again, it's termed part-time employment that is with the eventual goal of moving you into full-time employment outside of our organization. And then when it comes to the volunteer program, I'll hand it back to you because you say it much more beautifully.
I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, what do folks get when they are part of
The
volunteer
non-cash stipend.
Sure. Yeah. So the non-cash stipend, it has to be some sort of basic needs, right? And so we follow this hierarchy of basic needs, trying to address those, because obviously someone can't focus on their next step employment when they're worried about transportation and a cell phone this day and age, but then also where they're going to get their next meal or their shower. So we try and address that there. And we also do it through a strengths-based case management model, really trying to focus on folks' strengths. And pairing that with existing community resources. There's plenty of community resources here in this city and in every city that we work with that are underutilized, especially for the unhoused community. And we act as guides through case management a lot of the times. We also kind of practice a stick to what you're good at and partner for the rest approach when it comes to other service providers as well. So being that network, it's incredibly powerful, especially as a first step. Starting to remove those barriers to self-sufficiency. For one person, it might be, I don't have an ID. I can't, get into half these programs without an ID, right? Start there all the way up to employment and housing.
Thank you. How many members of the team here in Palo Alto do we have, the yellow shirt team?
Yeah, we have 35 team members and we have 6, I think we're about to have 7 the next week or so of our teal shirts. And I actually meant to bring this up earlier as well. Those, as Julie kind of mentioned quickly, those folks are leading our crews now. Did lead to some confusion here at council actually, and some misinformation that was shared that we were not out there for any period of time. That is not true. Since May of 2005, we've been out there week in, week out with the, first shutdown is the only caveat there. But I don't think a lot of our business owners downtown were used to seeing those teal shirts. Those are employees now in our Streets Team Enterprise programs.
And when we think about the litter removal in Palo Alto, do you have any sense, or maybe our staff members can answer this, what percentage of our beautifying the city efforts in the downtown are handled by DST versus other vendors? Ms. Cotton, I know you just, not to put you on the spot, but my question is, when we look at the 35 folks who are on the streets in yellow with DST, helping beautify the city, remove litter, and so on, what fraction of our city's need is being met by DST? Roughly.
That's something we'd have to look further into. I think if you're defining need as the total amount of people that are experiencing homelessness in the city,
I'm actually asking about the service itself of keeping the city, we hear from business owners that they are concerned. You mentioned that DST was founded because the Downtown Business Association was concerned with homelessness and cleanliness.
Yep.
And today, we still hear similar concerns, particularly cleanliness, frankly, and we're looking to beautify downtown and redo things and whatnot. And I'm just wondering, to what extent is the city counting on DST to help with what's needed? Or is it really less about the service that folks are providing and more about a priority to ensure that folks who are unhoused are having the opportunity to learn some skills and build community and so on?
Thank you for clarifying that. I wanted to make sure we were providing you with the information. We have our Assistant Director of Public Works online, Mr. Mike Wong, who can speak to the efforts that the Public Works Department is doing in terms of cleaning downtown and the city as a whole. And then I think that we can add on after that. So Mike, if you can jump in.
Hi, Mike Wong, Assistant Director of Public Works. Downtown Streets Team is one of several contractors that we use to help clean the city. We use staff as well. We have pressure washing contractors. We have street sweeping contractors, and the Downtown Streets Team. It takes a lot of staff and it takes a lot of help with contractors to keep the downtown areas clean. We've been spending a lot of additional staff to try to improve the cleanliness of the downtown areas recently, and it's been noticed. But we couldn't do it without the Downtown Streets Team, because they offer another set of employees to be able to help us do that. And all our employees, although we have several that are dedicated to downtown, we don't have them specifically assigned to picking up litter and deal with overflowing trash and to help with the cleanliness issues. And they're there 7 days a week, 9 to 5 every day on University and now Cal Ave. So they're a tremendous help.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
No.
Just to say, I think we're a small piece of that bigger puzzle, but certainly that is not our focus. Street cleaning is not our mission. It is to provide that pathway out of homelessness for our residents, with the added benefit to our business owners and to our project partners, and obviously to the city that we love.
Thank you. Councilmember Tanaka?
Yeah, thanks. So, when I first heard of downtown streets, I love the concept, right? It seems like you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And so it's a great idea. But I also heard from members of the public as well as business owners in downtown. And it seems like almost universally, like everyone's complaining about downtown not being very clean and decline of downtown. And so I guess I'm just trying to understand, I understand that maybe this is a partial, it's a partial mission, right? Maybe not the full mission of downtown streets. But I guess how do we have accountability? Because you have so many different people responsible for cleaning. So how do we hold each one accountable so that we know like who's responsible for what and are they doing their job? Because our downtown's kind of suffering from declining traffic, and I mean, I'm talking about pedestrian traffic, and so I just, this is one of the main services of downtown streets is actually the cleaning service. So I don't know, does staff have a idea of how each vendor is held accountable for their part of the cleaning?
Yeah, so I think that's sort of the information that Mr. Wong was providing. The responsibility for the cleanliness of our city is with our Public Works Department. So they have multiple contracts and staff that are working on keeping downtown clean, as Mr. Wong shared, and he can provide additional information if you have questions on that. Downtown Streets team is one of those providers. So the work that they're doing along with their mission is helping us keep downtown clean, but that is not the sole provider, nor do they share the sole responsibility for the cleanliness of downtown.
Yeah, I guess my question wasn't that. My question, because I think you just said what Mr. Wong said, but my question really is, how do we, given that we have this responsibility kind of dispersed among many vendors, how do we hold each one accountable for their part of the cleaning? Because otherwise, I'm just trying to think of a management practicality, right? Like, because or is like nobody accountable, right? And maybe that's the issue.
It's definitely not the case that no one's accountable. That's not good management. The contract that's in the packet for next week for Downtown Streets team is an example. We updated that contract and included performance measures in it. So that is one way that, as hearing the conversation from the city council and the community of knowing that we needed to make sure that we had things to hold each of our vendors accountable for. That is one of the ways that it's been addressed related to this particular organization, and that I believe is on consent for your June 17th council
Okay,
meeting.
great. This is probably the first, right? Or has this been done before? Has there been performance measurements? Because I never actually remember seeing that.
Very long time. Yeah, there's been performance measurements for a very long time. The contract mirrors a contract that we first had with Public Works about 2011.
Okay.
There's been a pretty lengthy scope of work in there for a very long time. And we get audited. I mean, they come out there and make sure that our folks are out there.
Okay. So if there's performance measurements, how have we been doing? How have you guys been doing on the?
We've been exceeding our performance measurements for 20 years.
20 years? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess if there's accountability, I guess it's not the Downtown Streets team, some other vendors not performing or something. Do all the vendors have a performance measurement or just Downtown Streets?
Mr. Wong has his hand up. I think he's hoping to address this question.
So in terms of Downtown Street Team, yes, there's accountability. They're actually required to provide to us monthly performance measures, which includes the number of team members on each shift of the day, how many, and they actually document how much trash they pick up. And, a recent note that's amazing to us, to tell you how much litter is out there and trash that people just, put on the ground is, they're collecting 10,000 cigarette butts a month on average, which is just alarming. And we have staff members who are out in the field working in the downtown areas constantly, and we're observing them and actively engaging and communicating with them.
Okay, it sounded like a lot of the things you just mentioned are self-reported. What are the performance measures that are independently measured in terms of the cleaning?
I'm sure that they have some information to share, but I also just wanted to remind the committee of the scope of the item today. So the performance measures are part of the item that's in consent for next week. Today, it's sort of the broader overview of the organization. So just wanted to pull us back up just a little bit, but I don't know if Mr. Richardson want to provide anything very brief.
Yeah, the only one that is not self-reported is the audits that is conducted by the Public Works Department.
And what does audits consist of?
They're making sure we're out there when we say they're going to be out there. We have a schedule that we need need to adhere to. We've got jobs that we need to conduct on a certain, Ramona Ave 3 times a week, for example. Make sure that we're there when we say we're going to be there.
Okay,
cleaning
so
up.
it's just more attendance. It's not a performance of cleaning. It's just attending.
No, we don't bring our debris to Public Works for them to measure it, for example.
No, but I mean, when you say audit, it's basically just making sure that people show up, but not necessarily that work is done necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, they're trailing our folks working and they're not letting us know when they're there. So they're seeing our folks picking up trash and doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay, well, I mean, from what you said, it sounded like the audit is just people showing up, right?
I mean, you might have to ask Mr. Wong, but they don't let us know and they follow us for a while and they make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And we do have a schedule that's in that contract as well.
Okay, but it sounds like it's an attendance schedule and everything else is self-reported.
Councilmember Tanaka, Kylie Nose, Assistant City Manager, and Mike, please help me out on this a little bit. It's not an attendance audit. The services that are provided are services where it requires crews to be walking certain areas on certain schedules. And as part of that walking activity, obviously, they are providing the service of cleaning. So staff do not then take the materials that are collected to weigh them or count them. However, they are not just observing attendance, they are auditing by observation of the activities of the provider at that point in time, given the type of service and the type of physical metric that one can calculate.
Okay,
Mike, do you have anything to add?
Sure. So they actually have a very strict time route that they have to follow. They have to hit certain areas. When we observe them, we make sure they're, in attendance, but we also make sure they're working and doing what they're supposed to. So we watch them and, if we see litter on the ground, we're making sure that they pick it up and making sure they're, reducing the overflowing trash cans, which are 2 of the main cleaning tasks.
Okay, so you're saying that in your audits, you do kind of like a secret shopper type thing. You don't tell them when you're going to be there. You watch them do it, and then you guys grade them on if they actually perform their job. Is that basically what you're saying?
We don't grade them. We report immediately back to their management team if there's an issue, which, there really hasn't been.
Okay, so you're saying that every time you guys go out there without prompting, you see them performing the job that they're expected to do without any problems, and you never have to report it. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay.
I think one clarification to that, and Mike, you alluded to this already in your comments, so I just want to make sure that we are not generalizing. Staff didn't say that they didn't ever find an issue when they were doing the audits.
No, I think you just said that, actually.
His former comments prior to that identified that when issues are identified, they immediately raise them to the management team, who then make corrective actions.
I just asked him if he ever raised it. He says never.
Well, let me back up. There are things that we hadn't noticed, and when DST was going through their labor model change, we noticed reduced staff, but we never, like Chris said, they were never not out there. They were always there. They had even the merchants noticed, and they were the ones who noticed. And when you say that, are they having an effect on cleanliness? Well, they are, because the merchants noticed that they weren't there. And when they were able to staff back up after they, created their new labor model, the merchants were actually out there thanking them for, coming back and seeing them in larger numbers. It's not that they were never there. As far as I know, I have not had any reports from my project management team of any issues of not seeing them do the work, do their assigned work. They are meeting their contractual obligations.
Okay, and what is the contractual obligation? Is it just a per attendance, or is there a performance metric of them doing their work? Because I think what they just said was just just attendance metrics. I didn't hear about a performance metric.
That information is in the June 17th report for council approval related to the contract as a whole. So it's not really intended for us to go into that level of depth today. It's in the report. You have the entire contract in the report for Monday.
Well, I think the action item tonight says presentation from Downtown Streets regarding Downtown Streets program. This seems like it's really well covered. Like, I mean, why can't we talk about it?
Councilmember Tanaka, you're free to have the conversation. My comment is related to the fact that there is not an action on your agenda this evening for this program. It's receiving a report.
Action number one.
It's receiving a report. There's no study session opportunity in this committee, so everything is listed as an action. But to just clarify.
Wait, hold on a second. I just want to understand this. I mean, it seems like a very broad topic, and you're saying that we're not allowed to ask about the performance of this program? I find that really hard to believe.
Councilmember, she's not saying that you can't ask questions about the performance. She's saying that you've asked these questions and she's answered them, and that the KPIs.
No, she just said I can't ask these questions because it's supposed to be for a consent item, which we're not allowed to ask questions on except in writing.
Well,
Yeah. and
you know,
what-
I think that this is a presentation from Downtown Streets team, so I just want to hear their presentation and if there's any questions about the program. But I also think, you know, with regards to the terms and conditions within the contract, that's not really here. And I don't know even if staff is prepared for this. So it would be best just to submit your questions to them directly. But Mr. Richardson, did you have some response?
Yeah. There's plenty of other metrics that we have to hit within the contract, especially we reshaped it and kind of formulated it into our previous CDBG contract that we had several years ago. So we're reporting on outreach interactions, for example, as well. That's a component of the contract, you know, days per week, that type of thing. We are also reporting gallons of debris removed, number of cigarette butts removed, number of needles removed, that type of thing as well.
Yeah. No, I was just trying to understand. And it seems like, you know, there's a reluctance to talk about it tonight, but I was just trying to understand because I've heard complaints and sounds like my fellow council members have also heard complaints about the downtown not being very clean. And so for me, it's natural to ask about the performance, right? How are the performance metrics working out? And I know self-reporting is one thing, but there's nothing like an independent audit. And it sounds like our staff is auditing this and apparently there's no problem. So maybe it's not an issue with your team. I don't know. But I haven't actually looked at the packet yet, but is it in there? Like, does it show like the staff's report of their performance and the number of times they went out there and the number of times that they, saw them doing what they needed to do?
I think that correct me if I'm wrong, it's just the contract, the extension of the contract, not actually the report about DST's performance and what you do to adhere to the contract.
Yes, and actually, we have Ms. Melissa McDonough online who prepared that item. So just briefly, she can describe what's in that contract amendment, if you could, Ms. McDonough.
Are you all on standby? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you, Melissa.
So just a brief synopsis of what you'll see next week. We reached out to our colleagues in other cities, other organizations that do similar work, former employees at DST, reviewed performance measures across a number of scenarios, and then combined sort of the scope of the existing public works contract with the piece that had always been a separate contract so that it would be easier to manage all in one place in one contract. As part of that, we clarified the language and we did add some performance metrics. Most of the metrics we added have to do with quality and outcomes rather than quantity. One of the reasons for that is that the quantity metric can vary due to circumstances that have nothing to do with performance. You have a chain smoker on the corner on Tuesday, June 3rd, you don't on Tuesday, June 13th, you're going to have a very different number of cigarette butts they pick up, for example. I hope that helps just give an idea of what you might expect in the contract next week.
Well,
And
I guess for me, the main thing I'd like to see is just that there's some sort of independent validation. In general, I've heard good things about downtown streets, so it's not necessarily your program, but it's more the issue that downtown in general is not very clean, and it seems to be going downhill. And so I just feel like in general we need to get things going, and we need every vendor to contribute, right, including downtown streets. What I've heard from staff so far is that a lot of it's been just attendance type of performance, which to me is not good enough. It's good to hear that there's something more now, but I don't know if this is a independent verification or is it just self-reported? So that's something else that would be interesting to know.
And if I may, Madam Chair, I think these are things that if there are questions after reading through that contract amendment for Monday, if you send them to staff, we will respond with as much information as we have based off the actual language in the contract. I think that would provide a lot more context than what staff is prepared to discuss this evening.
Councilmember
And the
Lithcott-Heems.
cleanliness of downtown isn't limited to this contract is the last part. Thank you.
I think I want to remind us that what we're talking about is a nonprofit organization whose purpose is to help people move from homelessness to a life of greater stability and dignity, and the opportunity to volunteer for our city. They're not getting paid. The opportunity to volunteer by picking up litter has a proven track record of helping people develop the skills of accountability, showing up on time, being accountable to colleagues, to a shift, to the work. And so the metrics that we might use to measure the success of it are going to be different than with a vendor whose purpose is to clean up the city, right? We're getting assistance in cleaning up the city from folks who are unhoused and are supported through your organization and so I really see it as different. I understand where Councilmember Tanaka is coming from with his analysis, but I would offer that this is a different type of organization. We're primarily about helping unhoused folks get back on their feet by developing the skills that they will learn by showing up on time for their shift and cleaning up the litter and the debris and so on in our city. Whereas there are other true vendors of city cleaning services that the city contracts with, where we might have a set of metrics and expectations and independent audit and so on that Councilmember Tanaka is speaking of. To my mind, these are in two very different buckets, that when we ask ourselves at the end of the day, did Downtown Streets team do its job? It's not about the number of bags of needles and butts and litter. We care about those things, but it's not about that. It's about how many people came in through the system, how many people worked up to different levels, how many people got, a job of some kind because they started out with you, how many people got housing because they started out with you. That those are the metrics we're actually trying to support by being your inaugural city with Downtown Streets team.
Let me go back to Councilmember Tanaka. Thank you, Councilmember Lithcott-Heems.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And actually, that's my second part here, which is around the performance of your core mission, which is to help people who are unhoused. And so how's that going, right? If you guys were to compare your program versus other programs, and by the way, I like your program a lot because of the fact that I think work is a great way to get people kind of going. So I think this is so you think I'm being critical? I'm being much more critical of the fact that I think our downtown is not being kept up nicely, right? And so I'm hoping not just for downtown street teams, but I'm hoping for all of our vendors that can our downtown. There's some sort of performance metric that's independent and not self-reported, because something is not right with our downtown. Something is not happening, and I'm getting complaints all the time about downtown not being clean. And so basically I want that fixed, right? And that's why, staff, I think you probably think I'm being too harsh here, but I think we need, we're paying for these services. They need to happen. They need to happen well because people are not happy about it. So, okay. Anyways, it's back to the core mission here. So for your core mission, how does it compare? I mean, if you compare like dollars per person that's become unhoused to housed, how do you guys measure that? And if so, how does it compare? If you look at number of like the ratio of like people who've been helped divided by the number of dollars, how does that?
Yeah, we have, it depends on the community. We have significantly less resources here in Palo Alto than we do in some other communities, especially when it comes to housing subsidies. And those make the difference, even if they're termed housing subsidies, which is kind of our specialty. So instead of a long-term Section 8, which, theorizes that someone will need that subsidy, or in a housing first approach, purely housing first approach, that they'll need that subsidy long-term. If we're able to especially pair that with employment through our workforce development spectrum, then we can get them on their feet a lot quicker. We don't have those resources here in Palo Alto, and so the dollar per housing placement is not going to be as pretty as it would be in communities, even other affluent communities where we have those resources.
Well, I guess I'm not asking about Palo Alto versus some other city. I'm just thinking within our own city and the different people that are trying to help the unhoused. How does it, do we have like a placement rate or something like that, a placement per dollar or something like that? Like, how do we know that, like I said, conceptually, I love the program. I like what it's trying to do. Because it kind of goes with what I think is what we should do. So I'm all kind of theoretically for this, but I'm also curious to know, because there's a lot of programs that we fund, right? That's like Home Key. We're building a bunch of low-cost housing. Actually, I shouldn't call it low-cost, very expensive housing for our unhoused. And so like, I always wonder about the efficacy of these programs, right? I mean, if we don't measure it, how do you know it works or it doesn't work, right?
Yeah, last time we measured it was under $50,000 a person, which is obviously less than the 60,000 number that we all hear in the state of California. Here in the Bay Area, it's obviously that number is going to go up.
Wait, say $50,000, and what do you mean by 50,000?
So we divide our budget by how many people we house in a year, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
Right.
so I see. So if you take your budget,
So last time we did that, it was less than 50,000 a person.
less than 50,000. Okay, and okay. Oh, so you guys do the other ratio the other way around.
Yeah, and I'm not the biggest fan of that metric, only because we're not primarily a housing agency, even though it leads to that.
Okay.
But
that's okay. That's still a metric. Okay, so I didn't know that was how people measured. Okay, so
and I think it's going to be better this year too. I'm not sure if you caught this earlier. This is a historic year for us in terms of both housing and employment placement.
okay.
We're pretty excited to crunch the numbers at the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, so does staff know what is the dollars per placement for other Palo Alto agencies?
There are a wide variety of agencies that serve our population. We don't have that information this evening.
Is it in our consent item next week?
No, the consent item next week is specifically about Downtown Streets Team and a contract amendment to extend their services.
Okay.
The question you're asking is a broader services question about all programs we're offering for our unhoused population in Palo Alto. That is a broader discussion that may come up with something like the gap analysis work that we have as a council priority objective project, which is us looking at all of the services that we provide and seeing the services the county provides and seeing where there's opportunity and where there are gaps available. So that's probably the next closest opportunity where that conversation would come up to give you some comprehensive information.
Okay, well, I think when we approve these contracts, I think it would be great for us to see this metric, right? Because when, the unhoused situation is a big problem, not just in Palo Alto, but everywhere. And we want to put our dollars where they're most effective. And maybe it's downtown streets. I don't know. Maybe, maybe we're getting a bargain here. Maybe we should put more money in, right? Or maybe it's a terrible deal. I have no idea. But I think we should know. I mean, like how big is the contract again with you guys?
I'll just respond also to the metrics. So something that might be helpful too is, we're looking at the human impact to dollar ratio, which is a little bit challenging because it can be, it's much more complex than that. But other things that we do measure, because once again, we're a social impact organization. We're here to support folks with their economic trajectory over time, because we understand, in tandem with other services, with housing, healthcare, systemic change, folks need employment to be able to overcome one of the core roots of homelessness, which is poverty, simply not having enough resources to be able to become housed, to meet your basic needs. And so we do have a robust metric system on the human impact side. We measure barriers that are removed to employment. So if you really look at that as an economic capital or an economic game trajectory, every barrier that we are able to support somebody in removing to actually becoming employable has a dollar amount. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but if we're able to support somebody in getting their license back so that they can fill out an I-9 form so they can become employed, get a pair of glasses so they can see and get their driver's license so they can be a driver, things like that, that actually over the course of our community, it has a fiscal and economic impact. And then we also measure transformational barriers. So the first is really really just barriers that, keep people from being employable. The other ones are things that transform people's lives and their ability to become stable. So an easy one is housing. Housing is a transformational barrier, which is associated with a very positive impact financially. And so I think that that is another thing just to look at, is over a trajectory of our community members who are unhoused, who we are investing in. It is more than just that year-to-year analysis.
Okay. Well, I think it's great that you're measuring lots of different things. I think for me, it's just because there's so many of these kind of programs out there, right? From Home Key to yours to a bunch of others, right? I think there's like a dozen or more, maybe more than a dozen, maybe hundreds. I don't know. There's a lot. And to me, I think what we want to do as a city is we want to put our scarce capital in programs that have the biggest bang for the buck. And it might be yours, it might be someone else's, but if we don't know what it is, I mean, I'm glad you guys knew what yours is, less than 50,000, which is good. I'm going to try to remember that when we hear these other programs. That when we don't know this, it's hard for us as council to decide or figure this out. I guess we can try to look it up ourselves.
I would also argue I don't think there's even a Home Key program that's building, or the Opportunity Center. There was a time I knew for sure that half the people living in there were former Downtown Streets team members, right? These programs need each other to work. A lot of times you can't measure a lot of these programs standalone and say they're more effective. When I give you that 50,000 number, it's because we have these resources over here that we're utilizing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. There's kind of like an ecosystem and whatnot, but it's also at some point there has to be some sort of accountability. And so, and some programs are probably more effective than others, right? And it's hard for me to believe that all the programs are equally effective and all of them need each other in order to survive. I think that there's probably some programs. I mean, I see it all day in business, right? I mean, usually like 20% of the products make all the money in the company, right? 80% of it really is just, we could have just done without it and done the same. And I think the same is true for almost anything, right? There's like a small majority is what's effective. And if we could identify that and put our money behind it, put the wood behind that arrow, which may be Downtown Streets, because actually I of all the like homeless programs out there, I actually like yours the best in terms of conceptually what it does, right? I think that's conceptually I like a lot. I just don't know, how it compares in terms of effectiveness. And it would, to me, I think it would behoove you guys because it sounds like staff's not going to do it, but it would behoove you guys if you guys can compare yours, in terms of dollars to placement, how against other ones, right? And because, if I saw that you guys were just way more effective, I'm like, oh, easy. We should put more money in Downtown Streets, right? So, or if there's, particular synergies that you have with other ones, knowing that as well would be great. But anyways, I would like more people to be helped, and that's why I'm kind of really interested in this topic in terms of how do we allocate our capital, and for us not to measure and not to know, I think is not right.
And I'll just respond, I think too, I'm a public health practitioner by trade. So the way that my brain works is very similarly looking at data, evidence-based decision-making, systemic change, how are we making the impact? And so when I think about the word effective, right, I think first that needs to be defined, because we've been talking about lots of different contexts here, right? So originally in the conversation, the effectiveness was how effective are we at contributing to cleaner streets? And then there's also the human impact. How effective are we at our mission, which is really to support folks with obtaining employable status or daily meaningful activities or community. So that would be the other piece I would parse out is, what's the effective measurement?
Yeah, I think having effective metrics is important, and not having too many of them, and having them going across different programs so we can actually see what works. Because if there's either self-reported or ones that are a little bit very fungible or not clear or different, or God forbid, no metrics. Because a lot of times I see these consent items and there's zero metrics, zero performance metrics reported. It makes me go, did it work? Should we keep doing it? I don't know, right? Ask a bunch of questions on consent. Sometimes I get answers, sometimes I don't, and so it makes it tough. And so, I mean, I in general, I'm rooting for you guys, right? In terms of, I want this program to be incredibly successful. I just wish there was some sort of basis for comparison. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Before I say anything, I think I'm going to ask Madam Clerk to go to public comments. I forgot. Thank you, Ms. Cotton Keynes, for reminding me.
We have no request to speak.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. And I think I want us to realize that our contract with you is a contract. So there's an obligation there, but I don't think the entire total cleanliness of downtown is upon the streets team's shoulders, because there's different levels of cleanliness and what they do. So I think that that's one of the things I wanted to impart, because I know our Public Works Department is also doing a very deep clean of a lot of different areas. And so downtown streets team is a complementary feature. So I want to say thank you. And so I just want to clarify, you said there's 35 yellow and 7 teal. Is that for this year? Or is this?
That's
is
at any
there-
given time. That's our team size that we can hold. So you might have somebody graduate one day and then we'll open up another spot for the person the next day.
But that's the number that you usually have, how do you say, that you're supporting?
At any given time, yep.
Okay, oh, okay. And then on the 2022 SF regulatory disagreement, can you go into a little bit more details about that?
Definitely. So in 2022, the city of San Francisco brought a regulatory disagreement upon us. They were questioning our volunteer model in context of the way that we delivered basic needs stipends. So we've always held true and still hold true that when we have team members who are engaging in daily meaningful activities, it is voluntary. They are able to engage with that and not in an employment basis, but a volunteer basis.
So they were worried that you were not perhaps giving them, oh, I see.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
They were questioning whether they should be considered 1099 employees or not.
Oh,
Based on does a basic needs gift card count or not. And so we still maintain that they were not classified as volunteers. We had many legal opinions over the years, but we decided to be proactive about it and change the model. The good thing is we had already decided to do the STE model. So that was the solution to some degree, is make sure that we could adhere to our contracts, for example, here in town, and have people out there that are now paid part of STE and also have the volunteer component. But we did limit the stipends to actually be for joining our team meetings and our workshops instead of for joining shifts, which is why we had a little bit of a dip in volunteers in the beginning, and it's why our cleaning is down 8% this year. But what we notice is that all of our human service impacts have gone up since making that change.
and I think, yeah, the dip makes sense. Okay, well, thank you and congratulations on the expansion and new executive director, and it's really great. So thank you for the presentation. It really helps, to have this interaction and a report back. Obviously, there's going to be questions. So thank you.
And not when we're on the consent calendar, right? Like when we can actually engage. We appreciate the time very much.
Yeah. And thank you so much. Again, I'll just say I was particularly looking forward to this because as I've gotten into the depth of our organization, I've developed kind of an attraction to Palo Alto in general, because for one, it's our flagship model. It all started here, but also I really just see the work that we're doing here as a beautiful display of community. Like when different community partners can come together on a common cause, we have impact and we see wonderful things. And so we are very excited to continue this partnership. And again, I'll pose the question, as you all continue to figure out what your vision is for the city, think about how downtown streets teams can continue to evolve into that vision.
Thank you. Oh, one more question.
Sorry, thank you. Chris, you might have a better handle on this than Julie, since you've been a part of it from the beginning. Has DST participated in our annual Mayfet Parade down University Avenue?
Yes, we have many times.
And up to recent?
No, we did not participate in the recent one.
Okay.
We did just in a smaller
Okay.
capacity than
I
typically.
mean, marching down the road.
Yes, we have. That
Okay.
was, I want to say, maybe
while
8, 9
ago.
years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'd love to do that again.
A number of us are talking about how to, sort of bring back the glory of that parade with more floats from school children, from the elementary schools. And
Yeah.
it just occurs to me that a profound way to say DST is an integral part of Palo Alto is for folks to march in their yellow t-shirts.
Yep. They would absolutely love that.
Behind a banner proudly and receive applause from the community for their efforts.
Yep. I love that idea. We'd love to participate. Yep.
Well, if there's nothing else, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you again, Chris. Okay, and with that, we'll close item number 1 and go to item number 2, which is approval of Office of City Auditor fiscal year 2025 task orders. Ms. Murdoch?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, council members. So the audit office is asking for approval for changes to several task orders. First, we're looking to extend task orders set to expire at the end of June to the end of December 2024. These task orders include the FY24 risk assessment and the FY24 audit plan. Work on the risk assessment and audit plan will begin in July, and we will plan to present the FY24 audit plan in the fall, with work beginning in January 2025. The other task order is related to oversight of and coordination with the external financial auditor and is on their ongoing work. The second request is we're asking for approval of the FY25 task order 5 with work to begin on July 1st, 2024, the beginning of the new FY25 fiscal year. And this task order provides support for ongoing audit reporting and administrative activities. Finally, we're asking to amend 2 FY24 task orders to realign the authorized budget. This will have a net zero impact. Essentially, we're moving $20,000 in excess funds from task 6, which is related to evaluation and benchmarking, and moving those funds to task 5, which is related to ongoing office administrative functions, reporting and managing the city's hotline. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Before we do that, let's go and see, Madam Clerk, if there's any public comments.
No public comments.
Thank you. We'll bring it back to the committee. If there is no questions or comments, we can just move the city auditor's recommendations.
So moved.
I'll second. Do you have any comments regarding the motion?
I'm just trying to move the staff recommendation.
Right.
Yep.
So
I
you
have no
don't need to
comments on my
speak to
motion.
it.
I do not.
Okay. I don't have anything to speak to it either. It's just extensions. Yeah.
Ready for a vote?
Yes, please.
Okay. Councilmember Tanaka,
Yes.
Councilmember Ku,
Yes.
Councilmember Lithcott-Hames.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Murdoch. Let's see. Item 3 has been removed from the agenda, so we'll go to item number 4, Office of the City Auditor, presentation of the Public Safety Building Construction Audit Report.
And Robert Selmer will be providing the presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone again. I'm Robert Zelmer. I'm a senior manager on our construction advisory team here, and I oversaw the the construction audit of the new public safety building. So our scope on this audit was specifically to review the billings and change orders submitted by the contractor, the construction manager, the architect, engineer, and the inspector of record to verify that the billings and the change orders were contractually compliant and had the proper supporting documentation and authorization. So we conducted this review on a monthly basis throughout the project through the period of March 2024, March of this year. So we reviewed invoices and payment applications from these contractors and consultants totaling approximately $106 million. The breakdown for each contractor and consultant is included in detail in our report. So the results of this review were communicated on a monthly basis with the Public Works Department and I can report that the outcome of this audit was a successful one. We did have what we referred to as several minor or immaterial findings throughout the project. These were due mostly to labor billing rate errors at the beginning of the project. However, these totaled approximately $10,000, which we would consider immaterial given the volume of billings that we did review throughout the project. In addition, all of these items that we did identify, they were resolved rather promptly. And as I mentioned, these were identified rather early on in the project, and we saw the occurrence of errors lessen as we went throughout the project. So the invoices and the change orders we reviewed, for the most part, all had the proper supporting documentation and authorization, and were all calculated correctly. So I guess, you know, due to the low occurrence of findings and the small dollar values thereof, we're comfortable stating that the controls and oversight as it relates to the scope of our audit were operating as intended. So I think I'll stop. Are there any questions I can answer at this point?
Thank you. Before we go to questions, we'll go to members of the public. Madam
No
Clerk?
members of the public.
Okay, thank you. That was easy. All right, back to committee. Do you have any questions, Councilmember Tanaka?
Still thinking.
Okay. Councilmember Litkat-Haynes, no. So I just wanted to ask, on a project as big as this, 1.6 million, right? Is it often that it would be a zero errors?
Every project is different, right? So every project has its own set of risks. Every project has its own set of contract documents. So I don't often say that it's appropriate to benchmark one project against another. I do have projects like this that we do audit that are similar in value to this project where we have zero findings or very small findings, as we did in this case. There's other projects where I have a large amount of findings. So in this case, as I mentioned, this was a rather successful audit in that the amount of errors related to the billings were very minimal.
Thank you. And Mr. Zellner, thank you for also saying, you know, that the projects are all quite different, even though the price might be similar. And thank you for the presentation. I am done with my questions, but
Okay, well, I'll ask some questions then. Okay, so I think is the auditor on? I can tell. Let me see if I could see their face on the screen. Oh, here it is. Okay. Actually, I should turn my camera on too. Let me do that. Okay, now you can see me. Hey, Kate.
Hi.
So I think on this project, wasn't there like some sort of lawsuit or something like that? There's some sort of like it rained or something like that, and we had some problems. Wasn't that? I thought there was some issue on this project. Was there not?
I did read about some delays in the project. However, assessing those delays would be outside of the scope of the audit, and I wouldn't have insight into the specifics on those.
I see. So the scope of the audit is, let's see the scope. So just the building and cost documentation.
Right.
Okay. Do you think that was an appropriate scope, or should there have been a wider scope on a project like this? Because this is a $106 million project, right? So it's a pretty substantial project.
That's not for me to say. The scope we presented on the audit was the scope that was accepted.
Okay. Kate, what do you think?
I mean, I would say it's hard for me to comment on, you know, what decisions went into determining, you know, that this audit would be done and what the concerns were at the time or what risks were being considered at the time. You know, this predates me by several years. I believe that the initial scope for this contract or this audit was back in 2021. So, you know, I can speculate, but, you know, I can't really give you, I can try and look into it though and give you, get back to you.
Are there any other audits planned for this project?
Not at this time.
We do have a recommendation in the report that you could perform a closeout audit on this project to basically carry the audit through in the current scope through the end of the project, which would involve doing a closeout audit to catch up on any billings throughout the audit, just to verify that, those are all contractually compliant and the controls continue to operate as intended. However, due to the fact that there was a low occurrence of audit or there was a low occurrence of findings, there's limited risk in the billings at this point, and so therefore an audit like that would be at the city's discretion.
Okay. For a project this size, what kind of other audits do you guys do?
We audit. I mean, my team specifically performs constructions audits like this of all around the country. We audit anything from smaller multi-million-dollar remodels all the way up to multi-billion-dollar mega projects.
Yeah, no, and I realize that. I guess what I'm asking is what are the types of audits? Like, so for a project that's 106 million, which I would guess is when the bigger projects you've audited, how, like, I guess what other audits typically are done on projects like this to make sure things are good?
Yeah, my team specifically does audits related to billing compliance.
Oh, I see.
I think other audits that I've seen in this space would be, you could look at change orders, you could look at, various things like that, but.
Yeah, again, as you look at doing specialty audits like that, right, you're looking at bringing in very specialized firms to do that audit work, right, versus, looking at compliance with the documentation requirements, right, compliance with the rate schedules and all that kind of stuff, which, that did fall under the scope, right? And so we did review change orders on this project. We did verify that all the supporting documentation was there, that the authorization was there. Where applicable, we looked at rate schedules that were attached to contracts to verify, things were priced accordingly. So there was, a considerable amount of review that went into those documents.
Okay. No, I don't doubt that. So how much was a change order dollar figure for this of the 106?
Yep. So I have the construction contract specifically. The construction contract, there was approximately $6 million in change orders, right? Which was, I don't know, approximately 7% of the contract value. And as I mentioned before, it's not often appropriate to benchmark one project against another. There's different circumstances, different risks that apply to every single project. However, that amount of change orders doesn't fall outside of expectations on a project of this size.
So when you guys do, I guess not you, I guess not for the building, but when you guys do change orders, is $6 million like an amount that would warrant a change order audit, or is it too small?
In this case, as I said, we did look at the supporting documentation behind the change orders to verify contract compliance on all those items, right? And again, the change orders were calculated correctly. They had the supporting documentation. They had the proper authorization. In terms of doing an assessment on the necessity of the change orders, again, you're talking about a whole different animal. They're done by a very, very specialized firm.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, is this dollar figure too small to warrant a special audit by a very special firm, or is it? I don't know enough construction to know. That's what I'm asking.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to specifically comment on that. I mean, I think you'd have to look at your risk, right, and the amount that you would be looking to, pay for an audit like that versus what you expect to recover, right? And so again, I can't comment on that. I can't opine on whether $6 million is too small or too large.
Okay. Does the auditor have an opinion on this?
I mean, I don't want to just throw numbers out there. I have looked at change orders and other audits in the past. Again, I feel like there's danger in speculating. I will say I remember a figure of 10% is typically, in the ballpark of what people see on construction audits. Maybe Robert has more experience with, can you speak to what percent of project change orders typically comprise?
Yeah, typically, I mean, if you're coming in at a number, that's kind of the ballpark benchmark as well, too. So if you're coming in under 10%, that's typically where you want to be on a project. of really any size. So this project, we fall well below that.
Okay, and how much, 'cause I remember looking at the consent items, we had, several dollar figures more than what we were hoping for. So is the cost over $6 million total, or is it less or more than that?
I don't have insight into the total cost overrun for the project. I only have insight into the specific scopes that we reviewed.
Okay,
So in terms of total project budget, I don't have those numbers.
does the auditor know?
I don't have those numbers either.
Does staff know?
Councilmember, I don't have the totality of the CIP in front of me at this moment. I can confirm a couple points that you've raised tonight. The first is this audit was actually commissioned, I believe, at you and some of your colleagues' behest when we awarded this contract, since this contract was being awarded in 2000 during the pandemic. And so there was extra concern. So that was the initiation for this task order in the audit. The second piece is on substantially complex construction, which this is considered that. The city does allocate and assume a 10% contingency to deal with change orders. So we are within that at this point.
Okay. Can you find out what the number is and tell me at some point?
I'm sorry, Councilmember, repeat that?
Oh, yeah. Can you tell me how much was budgeted and how much we went over?
I could ask staff to follow up on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, cool. I guess, yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I guess from the auditor's perspective, you guys probably see other public safety buildings. How does the cost of this building compare to some of the other ones that you guys have seen?
This is a specific area that I don't have a lot of experience in. I don't know if Robert has experience looking at this type of construction or this type of building. It's certainly something that, I can try and do some research on, but at this time I wouldn't be able to offer up an educated, opinion on it.
I can't comment on that either, nor can I comment on, specifics on specific other projects that we've audited. Again, every project is unique. Every project has its own budget. Every project is designed to fit a specific need, and therefore, oftentimes comparing one project to the next doesn't really yield an apples to apples comparison.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other lights or hands up for questions or comments. And so I'm just going to move the city auditor's recommendation to the city council for approval. The public safety construction audit report of May 21, 2024.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Lithcott-Haynes seconded.
Councilmember Tanaka,
Yes.
Councilmember Lithcott-Haynes,
Yes.
Councilmember Ku.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Our very last item is future meetings and agenda. Ms. Cotton Gates.
Thank you for giving me a moment. For August meeting, as of this moment, assuming staff items will be organized as we're planning, we have an item related to the council referral on discretionary spending that relates to the $2,000 recommendation from your procedures and protocols. The follow-up on that item, a race and equity update report, a few audit items. They aren't entirely settled at this moment, but we're anticipating maybe 2. And if there is time, you would have the boards and commissions handbook review as well with some of the proposed changes that came from the city council procedures and protocols discussion earlier or in the month of May. So there's potentially 5 items. So I will be trying to balance the agenda a little bit more, maybe request a slightly earlier start time.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask a question. A lot of our nonprofits, according to their contracts, sometimes they have to do report-ins like what DST did, right? Can we get, who does those reports usually go to? And can they come and do a presentation to policy and services as well?
Chair Ku, interesting question. As I process a little bit, I hearken back to the efforts underway with the nonprofit audit outstanding and the expectations that we want to set with our nonprofit partners moving forward, which does include obviously where we at currently. I would say our current reporting structure depends on our contractual relationship with each of them. So an example would be PATMA, Palo Alto Transportation Management Association, provides a report, and typically because it has financial ramifications associated with it, we'll have it heard by the finance committee. You know, his rep organizations that are going through the grant process are reporting through the his rep process and the HRC and the group that does that. So it's not really a one size fits all. And so that's why I think as we think through how we want to prospectively organize our nonprofit partnerships, this is a good area for us to just kind of keep an eye on in terms of what the council's intention is moving forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't realize they get routed to different committees. Well, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Is there anything? Oh, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Cotton Gaines, I just wanted to follow up on the item whose proper name I can't recall, but there was an attempt some years ago by council and PNS or HRC related to the equality of women and some kind of CEDAW. And we had raised it again on council this year, and some notion that it was kind of coming back around. Is it something that, does that sit with this committee or does it bypass this committee?
That's a great question. That's the CEDAW item, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, just trying to define acronyms. It's in our 2024-2025 Equity Action Plan. So Mr. Pierce and I are working with departments to implement a variety of things, and that is one of them. Because the council have previously given us direction to do that, we don't have to come through this committee, but it could come through this committee. It just depends on sort of as it's shaping up, we can see what makes the most sense, but we will always bring the updates about it to the committee during those race and equity update reports.
Okay, I'm looking forward to hearing about that. It sounds like we have a race and equity update coming.
You do.
So please be sure that that's part of the update. I think in this era in America, anything we can do to underscore the equality of women in this moment should not be, those opportunities should not be overlooked.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we're adjourned. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christine.